And thanks for joining us. Welcome to The Record. I'm John Bachman, in for Greta. It is time for Iran to give up its nuclear weapons, but the United States is prepared to act with force if that does not happen. Tomorrow in Switzerland, the U.S. and Iran will hold talks, and if those talks do not go well and Iran does not comply, President Trump warns of heavy consequences.
Meantime, we have tremendous power has arrived, and additional power, as you know, and other carriers going out shortly.
The president there referencing the USS Gerald R. Ford, a powerful aircraft carrier headed to the Middle East. It will join the USS Abraham Lincoln, along with several guided missile destroyers, fighter jets, and surveillance aircraft already in the region. The U.S. military is ready, but Iran says it is also ready to strike back. Secretary of State Marco Rubio admitted that they are dealing with, quote, radical Shia clerics in Iran. But Rubio was optimistic. He says a deal could happen. Now, a day before that, on Saturday, Secretary Rubio delivered a groundbreaking speech in Munich. It was firm, but it was also a message about uniting America with its European allies. The speech was powerful, so powerful, in fact, we want to play it for you in full. Here's Secretary of State Marco Rubio in his own words from Munich.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. We gather here today as members of a historic alliance, an alliance that saved and changed the world. You know, when this conference began in 1963, it was in a nation, actually it was on a continent, that was divided against itself. The line between communism and freedom ran through the heart of Germany. The first barbed fences of the Berlin Wall had gone up just 2 years prior. And just months before that first conference, before our predecessors first met here in Munich, the Cuban Missile Crisis had brought the world to the brink of nuclear destruction. Even as World War II still burned fresh in the memory of Americans and Europeans alike, we found ourselves staring down the barrel of a new global catastrophe, one with the potential for a new kind of destruction, more apocalyptic and final than anything before in the history of mankind. The time of that first gathering, Soviet communism was on the march. Thousands of years of Western civilization hung in the balance. At that time, victory was far from certain. But we were driven by a common purpose. We were unified not just by what we were fighting against. We were unified by what we were fighting for. And together, Europe and America prevailed. And a continent was rebuilt. Our people prospered. In time, the East and West blocs were reunited. A civilization was once again made whole. That infamous wall that had cleaved this nation into two came down, and with it, an evil empire. East and West became one again. But the euphoria of this triumph led us to a dangerous delusion that we had entered, quote, the end of history, that every nation would now be a liberal democracy, that the ties formed by trade and by commerce alone would now replace nationhood, that the rules-based global order, an overused term, would now replace the national interest, and that we would now live in a world without borders where everyone became a citizen of the world. This was a foolish idea that ignored both human nature and it ignored the lessons of over 5,000 years of recorded human history. And it has cost us dearly. In this delusion, we embraced a dogmatic vision of free and unfettered trade, even as some nations protected their economies and subsidized their companies to systematically undercut ours, shuttering our plants, resulting in large parts of our societies being deindustrialized, shipping millions of working and middle-class jobs overseas, and handing control of our critical supply chains to both adversaries and rivals. We increasingly outsourced our sovereignty to international institutions while many nations invested in massive welfare states at the cost of maintaining the ability to defend themselves. This, even as other countries have invested in the most rapid military buildup in all of human history and have not hesitated to use hard power to pursue their own interests. To appease a climate cult, we have imposed energy policies on ourselves that are impoverishing our people, even as our competitors exploit oil and coal and natural gas and anything else, not just to power their economies, but to use as leverage against our own. And in a pursuit of a world without borders, we opened our doors to an unprecedented wave of mass migration that threatens the cohesion of our societies, the continuity of our culture, and the future of our people. We made these mistakes together. And now, together, we owe it to our people to face those facts and to move forward to rebuild. Under President Trump, the United States of America will once again take on the task of renewal and restoration, driven by a vision of a future as proud, as sovereign, and as vital as our civilization's past. And while we are prepared, if necessary, to do this alone, it is our preference and it is our hope to do this together with you, our friends here in Europe. For the United States and Europe, we belong together. America was founded 250 years ago, but the roots began here on this continent long before. The men who settled and built the nation of my birth arrived on our shores carrying the memories and the traditions and the Christian faith of their ancestors as a sacred inheritance, an unbreakable link between the old world and the new. We are part of one civilization, Western civilization. We are bound to one another by the deepest bonds that nations could share, forged by centuries of shared history, Christian faith, culture, heritage, language, ancestry, and the sacrifices our forefathers made together for the common civilization to which we have fallen heir. And so this is why we Americans may sometimes come off as a little direct and urgent in our counsel. This is why President Trump demands seriousness and reciprocity from our friends here in Europe. The reason why, my friends, is because we care deeply. We care deeply about your future and ours. And if at times we disagree, our disagreements come from our profound sense of concern about a Europe with which we are connected, not just economically, not just militarily. We are connected spiritually, and we are connected culturally. We want Europe to be strong. We believe that Europe must survive. Because the two great wars of the last century serve for us as history's constant reminder that ultimately our destiny is and will always be intertwined with yours. Because we know that the fate of Europe will never be irrelevant to our own. National security, which this conference is largely about, is not merely a series of technical questions. How much we spend on defense or where, how we deploy it, these are important questions. They are. But they are not the fundamental one. The fundamental question we must answer at the outset is, what exactly are we defending? Because armies do not fight for abstractions. Armies fight for a people. Armies fight for a nation. Armies fight for a way of life. And that is what we are defending. A great civilization that has every reason to be proud of its history, confident of its future, and aims to always be the master of its own economic and political destiny. It was here, in Europe, where the ideas that planted the seeds of liberty that changed the world were born. It was here, in Europe, which gave the world the rule of law, the universities, and the scientific revolution. It was this continent that produced the genius of Mozart and Beethoven, of Dante and Shakespeare, of Michelangelo and Da Vinci, of the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. And this is the place where the vaulted ceilings of the Sistine Chapel and the towering spires of the great cathedral in Cologne. They testify not just to the greatness of our past or to a faith in God that inspired these marvels. They foreshadow the wonders that await us in our future. But only if we are unapologetic in our heritage and proud of this common inheritance can we together begin the work of envisioning and shaping our economic and our political future. Deindustrialization was not inevitable. It was a conscious policy choice, a decades-long economic undertaking that stripped our nations of their wealth, of their productive capacity, and of their independence. And the loss of our supply chain sovereignty was not a function of a prosperous and healthy system of global trade. It was foolish. It was a foolish but voluntary transformation of our economy that left us dependent on others for our needs and dangerously vulnerable to crisis. Mass migration isn't some fringe concern of little consequence. It was and continues to be a crisis which is transforming and destabilizing societies all across the West. Together, we can reindustrialize our economies and rebuild our capacity to defend our people. But the work of this new alliance should not be focused just on military cooperation and reclaiming the industries of the past. It should also be focused on together advancing our mutual interests in new frontiers, unshackling our ingenuity, our creativity, and the dynamic spirit to build a new Western century. Commercial space travel and cutting-edge artificial intelligence, industrial automation and flex manufacturing, creating a Western supply chain for critical minerals not vulnerable to extortion from other powers, and a unified effort to compete for market share in the economies of the global South. Together, we can not only take back control of our own industries and supply chains, we can prosper in the areas that will define the 21st century. But we must also gain control of our national borders. Controlling who and how many people enter our countries, this is not an expression of xenophobia. It is not hate. It is a fundamental act of national sovereignty. And the failure to do so is not just an abdication of one of our most basic duties owed to our people. It is an urgent threat to the fabric of our societies and the survival of our civilization itself. And finally, we can no longer place the so-called global order above the vital interests of our people and our nations. We do not need to abandon the system of international cooperation we authored, and we don't need to dismantle the global institutions of the old order that together we built. But these must be reformed. These must be rebuilt. For example, the United Nations still has tremendous potential to be a tool for good in the world. But we cannot ignore that today, on the most pressing matters before us, it has no answers and has played virtually no role. It could not solve the war in Gaza. Instead, it was American leadership that freed captives from barbarians and brought about a fragile truce. It has not solved the war in Ukraine. It took American leadership in partnership with many of the countries here today just to bring the two sides to the table in search of a still elusive peace. It was powerless to constrain the nuclear program of radical Shia clerics in Tehran. That required 14 bombs dropped with precision from American B-2 bombers. And it was unable to address the threat to our security from a narco-terrorist dictator in Venezuela. Instead, it took American special forces to bring this fugitive to justice. In a perfect world, all of these problems and more would be solved by diplomats and strongly worded resolutions. But we do not live in a perfect world. And we cannot continue to allow those who blatantly and openly threaten our citizens and endanger our global stability to shield themselves behind abstractions of international law which they themselves routinely violate. This is the path that President Trump and the United States has embarked upon. It is the path we ask you here in Europe to join us on. It is a path we have walked together before and hope to walk together again. For 5 centuries, before the end of the Second World War, the West had been expanding. Its missionaries, its pilgrims, its soldiers, its explorers pouring out from its shores to cross oceans, settle new continents, build vast empires extending out across the globe. But in 1945, for the first time since the age of Columbus, it was contracting. Europe was in ruins. Half of it lived behind an iron curtain, and the rest looked like it would soon follow. The great Western empires had entered into terminal decline, accelerated by godless communist revolutions and by anti-colonial uprisings that would transform the world and drape the red hammer and sickle across vast swaths of the map in the years to come. Against that backdrop, then as now, many came to believe that the West's age of dominance had come to an end, and that our future was destined to be a faint and feeble echo of our past. But together, our predecessors recognized that decline was a choice, and it was a choice they refused to make. This is what we did together once before, and this is what President Trump and the United States want to do again now, together with you. And this is why we do not want our allies to be weak, because that makes us weaker. We want allies who can defend themselves so that no adversary will ever be tempted to test our collective strength. This is why we do not want our allies to be shackled by guilt and shame. We want allies who are proud of their culture and of their heritage, who understand that we are heirs to the same great and noble civilization, and who together with us are willing and able to defend it. And this is why we do not want allies to rationalize the broken status quo rather than reckon with what is necessary to fix it. For we in America have no interest in being polite and orderly caretakers of the West's managed decline. We do not seek to separate, but to revitalize an old friendship and renew the greatest civilization in human history. What we want is a reinvigorated alliance that recognizes that what has ailed our societies is not just a set of bad policies, but a malaise of hopelessness and complacency. An alliance the alliance that we want is one that is not paralyzed into inaction by fear. Fear of climate change, fear of war, fear of technology. Instead, we want an alliance that boldly races into the future. And the only fear we have is the fear of the shame of not leaving our nations prouder, stronger, and wealthier for our children. An alliance ready to defend our people, to safeguard our interests, and to preserve the freedom of action that allows us to shape our own destiny. Not one that exists to operate a global welfare state and atone for the purported sins of past generations. An alliance that does not allow its power to be outsourced, constrained, or subordinated to systems beyond its control. One that does not depend on others for the critical necessities of its national life. And one that does not maintain the polite pretense that our way of life is just one among many, and that asks for permission before it acts. And above all, an alliance based on the recognition that we, the West, have inherited together. What we have inherited together is something that is unique and distinctive and irreplaceable, because this, after all, is the very foundation of the transatlantic bond. Acting together in this way, we will not just help recover a sane foreign policy, it will restore to us a clear sense of ourselves. It will restore a place in the world. And in so doing, it will rebuke and deter the forces of civilizational erasure that today menace both America and Europe alike. So in a time of headlines heralding the end of the transatlantic era, let it be known and clear to all that this is neither our goal nor our wish. Because for us Americans, our home may be in the Western Hemisphere, but we will always be a child of Europe. Our story began with an Italian explorer whose adventure into the great unknown to discover a new world brought Christianity to the Americas and became the legend that defined the imagination of our pioneer nation. Our first colonies were built by English settlers, to whom we owe not just the language we speak, but the whole of our political and legal system. Our frontiers were shaped by Scots-Irish, that proud, hardy clan from the hills of Ulster that gave us Davy Crockett and Mark Twain and Teddy Roosevelt and Neil Armstrong. Our great Midwestern heartland was built by German farmers and craftsmen who transformed empty plains into a global agricultural powerhouse. And by the way, dramatically upgraded the quality of American beer. Our expansion into the interior followed the footsteps of French fur traders and explorers whose names, by the way, still adorn the street signs and town names all across the Mississippi Valley. Our horses, our ranches, our rodeos, the entire romance of the cowboy archetype that became synonymous with the American West. These were born in Spain. And our largest and most iconic city was named New Amsterdam before it was named New York. And you know that in the year that my country was founded, Lorenzo and Catalina Giraldi lived in Casal Monferrato in the Kingdom of Piedmont, Sardinia. And Jose and Manuela Reina lived in Sevilla, Spain. I don't know what, if anything, they knew about the 13 colonies which had gained their independence from the British Empire. But here's what I'm certain of. They could have never imagined that 250 years later, one of their direct descendants would be back here today on this continent as the chief diplomat of that infant nation. And yet here I am, reminded by my own story that both our histories and our fates will always be linked. Together, we rebuilt a shattered continent in the wake of 2 devastating world wars. When we found ourselves divided once again by the Iron Curtain, the Free West linked arms with the courageous dissidents struggling against tyranny in the East to defeat Soviet communism. We have fought against each other, then reconciled, then fought, then reconciled again. And we have bled and died side by side on battlefields from Kapyong to Kandahar. And I'm here today to leave it clear that America is charting the path for a new century of prosperity, and that once again, we want to do it together with you, our cherished allies and our oldest friends. We want to do it together with you, with a Europe that is proud of its heritage and of its history, with a Europe that has the spirit of creation and liberty that sent ships out into uncharted seas and birthed our civilization, with a Europe that has the means to defend itself and the will to survive. We should be proud of what we achieved together in the last century, but now we must confront and embrace the opportunities of a new one. Because yesterday is over. The future is inevitable. And our destiny together awaits. Thank you.
All right, there we see Marco Rubio getting a curtain call of sorts, a speech that is still reverberating around the world. Let's welcome in our panel now to talk about it. Former Chief of Staff for President Trump's National Security Counselor Fred Fleitz is here. Also with us, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of State Joel Rubin and former Senior Advisor to the Trump and Bush administrations Christian Whiton is here. And Christian, we'll begin with you. What are your main takeaways there from Rubio's speech?
Well, it was certainly well received. I think it was actually interesting. If you look, it was very similar in content. In fact, it was even more expansive on the America First agenda than the speech given last year by Vice President J.D. Vance. Everyone thought Rubio gave a kinder and gentler speech, and he certainly began the speech and ended the speech with some comforting language. But he talked about things like culture, like the climate change cult, like securing borders. He backed up Trump on the trade agenda, saying it was a mistake to deindustrialize. Really across the board, I think this went farther. You had people like Nancy Pelosi, who we recall as the former Democrat Speaker of the House and stock picker par excellence, saying Rubio did pretty well. He was better than Vance. But today, the UK Guardian, a left-wing paper, said, wait a second, this is just two sides of the same coin. So I think Rubio did well. I also think that this audience, they spent the last year doing nothing based on what they should have learned from J.D. Vance, and I think they'll spend the next year doing nothing. Europe is sort of a lost cause.
No, I think that's an important point. A lot of the messaging is the same, a little different package coming from Rubio. But I also think that a lot of these people have seen what the Trump administration has done thus far in its first year, and that may have tempered the audience a little bit as well. Now, regarding Iran, Secretary of State Marco Rubio said this today. Here he is.
Look, doing a deal with Iran is not easy. I said it yesterday, I'll repeat it again today. I mean, we have to understand that Iran ultimately is governed, and its decisions are governed by Shia clerics, radical Shia clerics, okay? These people make policy decisions on the basis of pure theology. That's how they make their decisions. So it's hard to do a deal with Iran. We've always said it's hard, but we're going to try. That's what the president is trying.
So, Fred, can a deal get done? Those are pretty high criteria. Radical Shia clerics making the decision here. Can a deal get done?
Well, the Iranians are notorious of pretending to be interested in negotiating and creating expectations for an agreement. But the reality is that they don't want an agreement. We'll deal with them if they'll strike a real deal on uranium enrichment, on their missile program, proxies, and to stop attacking the Iranian people. The leadership isn't interested in deals on any of those things. They just want to buy time. They want Trump to go away. Trump's not going away. He's sending another aircraft carrier force to the region. Trump's first preference is to try diplomacy. He's going to go through the motions, and I don't think this is going to go anywhere.
And the Trump administration has been pretty open about seeking a change in power in Iran. We've seen these weeks of protests. Thousands of people have been killed, demanding change and freedom from the oppressive regime. Here is what the president said about Iran on Friday.
Do you want regime change in Iran?
Well, it seems like that would be the best thing that could happen. For 47 years, they've been talking and talking and talking. In the meantime, we've lost a lot of lives while they talk, and legs blown off, arms blown off, faces blown off. It's been going on for a long time, so let's see what happens.
Joel, what do you think about regime change, the probability that it might actually happen, and if so, what does it look like?
Yeah, John, look, first, I do want to say that Secretary Rubio's speech was an impressive speech, and I think what he did is sort of create a foundation for this discussion about Iran. We can't go it alone regarding Iran, but this regime has lost all legitimacy inside the country as if it had it before. But now it's massacred thousands of its own civilians just in the last month, and in the most heinous way. I do believe, like what Fred said, in negotiating with them at the table, it's crucial that they make real concessions. They know what is being asked of them. And if they don't agree, I think we're going to see military action. And I think that is something that they need to accept will happen. It's no longer going to be just an ongoing negotiation like we've seen for years and years since the end of the nuclear deal in 2018.
There was some reporting today that President Trump told Benjamin Netanyahu that they could act if there isn't a deal reached. Again, we'll all wait and see where this goes, but we've seen both countries act in recent months on the threat of Iran. Let's talk a little bit more about the Rubio speech. He warned of Europe's civilizational erasure yesterday. A top EU official rejected that notion.
Contrary to what some may say, woke, decadent Europe is not facing civilizational erasure. In fact, people still want to join our club, and not just fellow Europeans. When I was in Canada last year, I was told that over 40% of Canadians have an interest in joining the European Union.
Well, Christian, we've seen Canada cheating at curling in the Olympics. They lost a fight to a French hockey player. Not going so well for Canada right now. But look, we've seen the impacts of unmitigated migration on these European countries. You've seen the populist uprisings take place, the nationalistic movements taking place. Is that really the case, what that European just said there? Do you agree with her?
Well, yeah, I don't know about the Canadians. If they wanted to join the EU, I'm all for it. They're still dependent for about half their imports and half their exports on the United States, which is why they face financial ruin if they don't sort of grasp this reality and stop playing footsie with China. But if you look at what von Leyden said, and compared to the reality, which is the big three governments in Europe, Britain, France, Germany, if they were free and fair elections held today, all three of those governments would go down in flames, partly because of economic malaise, largely because they still have uncontrolled immigration that these populations don't want. You have no-go zones in places like Malmö, Sweden, where if you wear a yarmulke, appear to be Jewish, you'll get spat on if you're lucky and nothing more violent happens to you. It is change that's being brought about by this European political elite without the consent of the people they govern. That's what Vance outlined starkly last year, but Rubio reinforced it today. And if these people want to stay in power, they should address it. But I think more likely, they will have to face the music with their own voters.
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of Democrats from the United States attending this conference, including Governor Gavin Newsom, who likely is running for president. Here is what he said about climate change policies and President Trump.
I hope, if there's nothing else I can communicate today, Donald Trump is temporary. He'll be gone in 3 years. California is a stable and reliable partner in this space. And it's important for folks to understand the temporary nature of this current administration in relationship to the issue of climate change and climate policy.
So climate change, is that the type of messaging that Democrats are going to be using, Fred, come 2028?
I hope so, because I think it's really a losing issue. And I think most Europeans realize that their climate policies are hurting their economy. They realize that jobs and dollars are flowing from California because their economy is so backward because of their radical environmental policies. So look, if this is going to be on the platform of the Democratic Party for 2028, bring it on.
All right, Fred, thank you. Joel, Rubin, great to have you with us as well. Christian Whiton, always great to see you,
Thanks
gentlemen.
so much.
You have a good one.
Thank you.
Coming up, are there any new clues in the search for Nancy Guthrie? Plus, Attorney General Pam Bondi says all the Epstein files have now been released, but do they reveal anything? That when the record continues.
When I served in combat, we relied on the most accurate information to complete the mission. We worked in small units that require trust. That mission hasn't changed. I'll bring you the best information that you can trust.
Watch Carl Higbee's Frontline every weeknight, 6 p.m. Eastern on Newsmax.
Precise designs, subtle curves, curated upgrades, elevated design for thoughtful living. Thuma.
I was tired of being exhausted at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Toxic EMF radiation is coming from your smart devices.
We don't see EMFs. It's out of sight, out of mind.
People around the world are choosing Bodywell. Just peel, stick, and protect. Bodywell's BioCard protects your entire body.
This little device changed everything.
My kids are my world, and I want to do everything I can to protect them.
Go to Bodywell.com, order your BioCard today, and get a BioChip, a $99 value for free.
Hello, everyone. It's President Donald J. Trump, and it's Trump time. Check out this red beauty. It's one of my new watches. Wear it proudly on your wrist, and everyone will know exactly what it's for, who it represents. It's really going to be something special. It's for your favorite president. Get your watch today at gettrumpwatches.com. These make a great gift. It's Trump time.
I'm Yalmer Heinrich. I'm in the nutritional business, primarily selling plant-derived minerals. Now, after being in this business for 43 years, owning a cancer hospital in Mexico, and associating with some of the most knowledgeable nutritional people in the world, I came to this conclusion. The world is sick due to a lack of minerals in our food, which is caused by a lack of minerals in topsoil. There is an incredible and proven nutritional product on the market that can overcome this problem. It's known as Immuno 150. This unusual food supplement contains 70 plant-derived minerals and 80 additional nutrients. There's nothing like it. You can learn everything about Immuno 150 by watching the 3 videos on our website. If you're interested, you can order online or call the number on the screen. Now, Immuno 150 is different, it's real, it's powerful, it's helped thousands, and we believe it enjoys the highest reorder rate in the industry.
As a physician, I fielded many patient questions about ways to prevent cancer. And while we learn more every day, we're still not there. But it was my own cancer diagnosis that motivated my total immersion into the research with one goal: to keep my cancer from ever returning. The human body is incredibly capable of protecting us, but we have to do our part. We have to give it the ammunition it needs to fight. My studies led me to create SHIELD, the first of its kind protective nutraceutical system. SHIELD combines 10 high-dose natural ingredients to super boost your immune system and support cellular detoxification. SHIELD is just that, a shield of rare and powerful nutrients to support cellular health and to help fend off disease, so you can live life to the fullest.
Save $25 with promo code LIVE at victoryagainstcancer.com.
All right, we wanted to update you on a shooting in Rhode Island. It happened at an ice rink in the town of Pawtucket. There was a high school hockey game happening there. According to local media, 2 people are dead, including the shooter. Reports say 4 victims were taken to the hospital. We will follow and continue to follow this story and bring you any updates when we get them. Well, it's been 16 days since Nancy Guthrie disappeared. The investigation has entered week 3 now with very few, if any, major breaks in the case. Yesterday, the FBI gave a small update about a glove that was found a couple of miles from the Guthrie home in Arizona. The FBI has sent that glove in for DNA testing, but the agency does believe the glove appears to match those worn by the masked suspect you see here in this video, recorded by that Ring doorbell camera. The FBI, along with investigators from Pima County, the Sheriff's Office, have been leading the case. They have been searching the nearby roads and shrubbery for anything that gets them closer to finding answers. Meanwhile, last night, Nancy's daughter, Today Show host Savannah Guthrie, posted another plea on Instagram.
To whoever has her or knows where she is, that it's never too late. And you're not lost or alone. And it is never too late to do the right thing.
Senior correspondent John Huddy has been all over this story. He joins us live now from Tucson with the latest. Good afternoon, John.
Yeah, John, good afternoon to you. And as we're awaiting the DNA results from the forensic tests on those gloves that were found about 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home to see if there's a match with any DNA recovered inside, we just received an update from Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos. And I'm going to read this to you as we're taking a live look, by the way, from our drone cam at Nancy Guthrie's residence behind me. But this is important. So the sheriff sent out this statement today, John, and it reads, quote, "To be clear, the Guthrie family, to include all siblings and spouses, has been cleared as possible suspects in this case. The family has been nothing but cooperative and gracious and are victims in this case." And then this statement goes on to read, "To suggest otherwise is not only wrong, it is cruel. The Guthrie family are victims, plain and simple. Please, I'm begging you, the media, to honor your profession and report with some sense of compassion and professionalism," end quote. So what's happening here, this is a pushback from the sheriff against essentially the speculation and conjecture that we've been seeing, including from some organizations, some media organizations, but also a lot of those online, some podcasters, the online sleuths, the armchair detectives, pointing fingers at family members, including Annie Guthrie, Savannah's sister, Nancy's daughter, and her husband, Tommaso, who live a couple miles from Nancy Guthrie's house. FBI investigators were there, clearly in an effort to rule out family. So whether or not this stems from possible DNA evidence being recovered, being analyzed, and ruling out the family remains to be seen. But obviously, this is the sheriff's department pushing back and dispelling a lot of those rumors, the speculation, and conjecture. And on that note as well, the Pima County Sheriff's Department sent also an update earlier today to the media saying that the department can, quote, confirm the clothing seen in the video may have been purchased from Walmart. This remains a possibility only. And what they're talking about is the clothing that's worn by that suspect in the Nest camera. There's been speculation that maybe all of it was bought at Walmart. He's wearing that backpack that you can buy at Walmart, the Ozark Trail backpack, something we were able to buy at a local Walmart. But again, there's no definitive evidence that the suspect here bought all of that at Walmart. Just some possibilities, and again, speculation. Also, the Sheriff's Department put out another statement as well today, John. Again, this goes to all the speculation and conjecture, saying the Sheriff's Department has never stated that this was a burglary gone wrong. Any reports indicating otherwise are inaccurate. So right now we are waiting again for the DNA analysis on those gloves found nearby Nancy Guthrie's home to come back to see if there's a hit or any match with any DNA evidence and physical evidence recovered inside her house at this point. So we're awaiting more information from the FBI. I've reached out to the FBI several times today, John, and at this point, again, I'm awaiting a response. But as Savannah Guthrie said in that message, the hope is that her mother, 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie, now day 16, the third week of this investigation, is in fact still alive, though we don't have any proof of life to this point, John. Back to you.
Yeah, it's always the difficult aspect of working with the FBI. They never really share any information unless it benefits them to get it out to the public. Notoriously tight-lipped about this type of stuff. John, the last news conference from the police, the sheriff's office there, and the FBI was February the 5th. That's 11 days ago. Why haven't we heard from them in that type of venue again?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's something I'm going to be asking the sheriff. We're supposed to be talking to him tomorrow. He's been selective about interviews. We saw that on Friday. He had certain outlets, particularly local media, that he was talking to. So that's going to be among the questions, presuming we are in fact able to talk to him tomorrow, or hopefully even today, we're going to be asking him. But, that's a big question and something to counter a lot of the speculation and conjecture. There's a feeling that they should be doing these updates every single day. What I'm surmising is more than likely a lot of these questions have to go to the FBI, because the FBI is in charge of analyzing that DNA, analyzing the forensic evidence. So presumably the FBI is saying, hey, we're taking the lead when it comes to that. And that's why there's a little bit of, probably a little bit of a pushback from the feds on it, John.
Yeah, one way to avoid having to put out those types of statements about the conjecture and rumors and stuff is to do those news conferences. Hopefully we'll get more information. John, good work. Yeah. Keep it up. We'll see you soon.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, coming up, a story to remind us that sometimes humans, probably most of the time, right? Humans are better than technology. That when the record continues.
When it comes to my daily heart health supplement, I've got 3 rules. It's got to be plant-based, it's got to be doctor recommended, and it's got to be Super Beets from Human.
Super Beets is the #1 cardiologist recommended beet brand for heart health support, with clinically studied grapeseed extract for nearly 2 times more effective blood pressure support than diet and exercise alone.
Super Beets works. I swear by it, and I know you're going to love it too.
Try Super Beets today at human.com.
Some wireless companies say that they stand for something. What exactly do they stand for, and why won't they say it out loud? Let me tell you what Patriot Mobile stands for. They stand for the lives of the unborn. They stand for the Second Amendment and the right to protect yourself and your family. They stand for our veterans and first responders who sacrifice so much for our freedom. Make the switch to Patriot Mobile today and support a company that doesn't just say they stand for something, but one that stands for the things that matter the most.
WeatherTech,
isn't just for new cars. No matter how old or new your car is, it deserves WeatherTech. With laser-measured protection for practically every car on the road, we've got you covered. Because messes don't care what year your car is. Whatever you're driving, we got it. We got it. We got it. Got it. We got it. We got it. We've got it. Oh, we got it. No matter what year your vehicle is, it deserves WeatherTech. Order your American-made protection today at WT.com. We're WeatherTech. You know we got it.
Are you or a loved one a military veteran that has been diagnosed with mesothelioma? Do you have questions about getting the best treatment or paying medical bills? Have you received the proper care and compensation you deserve? Let our firm serve you with the same dedication you served your country. We are exclusively devoted to helping those with mesothelioma. Call now to get this free book, and we'll answer any question you have. We'll even visit you.
Call 800-555-8958 or go to mesobook.com.
I'm Yalmer Heinrich. I'm in the nutritional business, primarily selling plant-derived minerals. Now, after being in this business for 43 years, owning a cancer hospital in Mexico, and associating with some of the most knowledgeable nutritional people in the world, I came to this conclusion. The world is sick due to a lack of minerals in our food, which is caused by a lack of minerals in topsoil. There is an incredible and proven nutritional product on the market that can overcome this problem. It's known as Immuno 150. This unusual food supplement contains 70 plant-derived minerals and 80 additional nutrients. There's nothing like it. You can learn everything about Immuno 150 by watching the 3 videos on our website. If you're interested, you can order online or call the number on the screen. Now, Immuno 150 is different, it's real, it's powerful, it's helped thousands, and we believe it enjoys the highest reorder rate in the industry.
Over the weekend, Democrat New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, as well as former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, attended the 62nd Munich Security Conference in Germany. While there, AOC spoke on 2 different panels testing out her foreign policy credentials. And separately, Hillary Clinton spoke on a panel. During Clinton's appearance, she clashed with European officials about her stance on President Donald Trump's policies. Capitol Hill Fight Club PAC chairwoman and Miami-Dade Republican Party Executive Committee woman Angie Wong joined us, as well as Democratic former California Assemblyman Mike Gatto. Great to see you both.
Great to be here,
Thanks, John.
All right, Angie, first to you. Let's start with AOC and her appearance, making it seem like she's trying to gear up for a presidential run. How'd she do?
Oh, she showed that she had zero foreign policy chops. She messed up everywhere, giving us a great word salad again. So here's what I took from her word salad. She couldn't give a clear answer on the Taiwan-China conflict. She didn't know how to talk about that. She said that Venezuela was below the equator. Okay, someone give her a map, please. Oops. And she even suggested that the U.S. is financing genocide in Gaza. So she's there to push out her message of fake news. Clearly, she doesn't even know her own geography. I don't think she even gets a D on this one because she made a fool of herself and the United States and the Democratic Party all in one go.
So no D, that means a failing grade for AOC. Mike, what do you think? We'll see AOC on a 2028 presidential ticket?
So I hope not. I think there's a lot of Democrats who would describe those two as the used to be and the gosh, we hope never is. There are better choices for Democrats to nominate in 2028 than AOC. A poll came out today that showed her at 2%. So I will reiterate that not all Democrats support people with AOC's brand of politics. But certainly when one makes a fool of oneself on the national stage and the international stage, it doesn't look good for the party or for the country. And I think that means it won't look good for her chances either.
Yeah, we also saw a lot of trash talk from Gavin Newsom towards the Trump administration while he was over there in Munich. You know, the difference between AOC and Gavin Newsom, Angie, in this kind of setting is that Gavin Newsom might say just the same type of ridiculous stuff, but he just delivers it with a lot more confidence, and he has those hand movements, and he's convinced himself that he's right.
Yeah, the one thing you need to do as a politician is know who your audience is. He was going on and on about how bad Trump is, how bad his administration is. But, look at California. He hasn't really accomplished all that much other than a lot of noise in California, a lot of complaints coming from the citizens there. So, I don't know why he was even there or why he even tours the world when there's so many problems in his home state. But again, they were there to push out the message that Trump is orange man bad. If that's going to be the message going into 2028, we've seen it fail multiple times now in multiple elections. So again, that's what the Democrats have right now. They're also pushing anti-ICE. Do you think they care about ICE in Germany? No, but he was saying that because he didn't know who he was speaking with.
Yeah, it's always a sensitive subject when you bring up the Nazis and the Gestapo inside Germany, Mike. And that's what Gavin Newsom did. He went straight in there to Munich and compared ICE and the U.S. military in California to Nazi Germany. Is that going to help him out in his quest to be the next president of the United States?
Yeah, look, obviously having a federal border police force, which every country in the world has, is not comparable to the Gestapo and Nazi Germany. And I think the Germans would be the first to tell our governor that. Gavin Newsom is a tremendously talented politician. He's somebody who's been ahead of the curve for most of his life. I like to think that he should spend his last year here in California really getting, in the weeds on the really, really tough issues. I actually think it would serve him better as he goes around to Iowa and New Hampshire to say that he was not afraid to take on the tough issues in his home state, rather than doing these national appearances where all he does is talk about Trump. The Democratic Party has got to get away from that. We got to be for something rather than being just against Trump.
And that's what a lot of Hillary Clinton's talking points were based on, just being against Donald Trump while she was over there in Munich. Angie, great to see you again. Mike Gatto, always great to see you as well. You both take care.
Thanks, John.
You too, John.
All right, it is ex-Duke of New York, ex-Duke of York, I should say, Prince Andrew Mountbatten Windsor ghosting the House Oversight Committee. Yesterday, Oversight Committee ranking member Robert Garcia was asked if the committee had heard back from the letters that they have sent to the former prince over his ties to disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein. And here's what the ranking member, Garcia, had to say.
Have you heard back yet from the man formerly known as Prince Andrew?
We have not, but we absolutely have sent letters. We want to actually talk to Prince Andrew, and it's not just Prince Andrew, former Prince Andrew.
Right.
I mean, what's happening right now across, over in the UK is pretty stunning, and it's actually a show of what happens when the government listens to the public. There are actually things happening to those that have been involved.
Meanwhile, on Saturday, U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi announced in a letter that all the Epstein files have been released. The letter reads in part, quote, "In accordance with the requirements of the Act and as described in various department submissions to the courts of the Southern District of New York assigned to the Epstein and Maxwell prosecutions and related orders, the department released all records, documents, communications, and investigative material in the possession of the department that relate to any of 9 different categories," end quote. The letter also includes a list of more than 300 high-profile names. So we'll see where it goes from here. Now to a story about common sense. In the UK, an Amazon driver and a passenger had to escape their van after it got stuck in a river. So how did that happen? Well, they're blaming the GPS. The driver was attempting to make a delivery on an island near Southend, England. To get there, the GPS said to take a path called the Broomway. But officials didn't allow people to drive on the Broomway because it is only exposed when the tide is out. And when the tide rolls in, it comes in so fast that most people can't escape it. And many have died. The Amazon driver and his passenger tried, but obviously got stuck trying to take this route. They got out unharmed. The van was stuck in the water overnight. A local farmer helped pull it out. Don't know how wet the packages were once they got it out. Coming up, an unexpected twist during a big bust. Criminals did not see this one coming. That story when the record continues.
I'm a martial artist, a skydiver, a pilot, and all of them require your feet to work. get up in the morning and it felt like I was standing on marbles on my heel. When I went into the Good Feet store, the fitting was personalized. It was all about me. You put in the arch supports and your day becomes better and the sun shines, the unicorns run by, and it's a good life. I'm Randy, and that's my Good Feet story.
See for yourself with a free personalized arch support fitting at the Good Feet store.
Nobody knows Corvettes like McMulkin Chevrolet, the world's largest Corvette dealer for 5 consecutive years. Set apart by its name alone, Corvette delivers a legacy of American craftsmanship, and a vehicle that sets the bar for performance cars deserves a buying experience that beats it. With hundreds of Corvettes in stock and ready for immediate delivery nationwide, it's no wonder Corvette enthusiasts from across the USA keep coming back to McMulkin Chevrolet.
You deserve high quality. You really do. At Balance of Nature, we don't cut corners. We could cut corners or extract individual vitamins and minerals rather than source whole foods. But that's not who we are. We don't isolate one specific part and sell it alone. Why? Because phytonutrients are woven into the whole plant. Everything works together as one complete package the way nature intended. Balance of Nature supplements aren't dried juice or a powdered extract. They are a vibrant mix of ingredients of 47 whole fruits, vegetables, spices, and fibers. Each ingredient then goes through a tailored vacuum-cooled process, is grounded into a fine powder, and packed into plant-based capsules in order to preserve those naturally occurring phytonutrients. We are real ingredients only, always. Start your journey with Balance of Nature supplements. Go to balanceofnature.com and subscribe and save today.
Since the founding of America 250 years ago, many things have changed. The homes in which we live, the clothes we wear, the jobs we hold, the conveniences we enjoy. But some things never change. The commitment of husband and wife, the importance of passing along our values to our children, the rewards of service to community and country, the faithfulness of God. Some wonder how America has thrived for so long and how we can ensure she continues to. As long as we keep first things first, we've only just begun. America, the beautiful.
You moved in. You nested.
Hey, what are you doing?
You partied. You cuddled. You made egg rolls. You slept in. Or tried to. And you kept growing. Now it's time for the next chapter. With Open Door, hit an all-cash offer for your home in 24 hours. Because saying goodbye should be the hardest part. Move into your future with Open Door.
Don't kibble your dog.
Hey, Dr. Marty.
Hey, back.
What's wrong with this?
Let's check it out. It's still kibble, which means they're ultra-processed. At Dr. Marty, we freeze-dried premium meats, fruits, and vegetables, and they're gonna love it.
Welcome back. Brazilian police officers took a different approach to crime on Friday the 13th. At a carnival in Rio de Janeiro, officers disguised themselves as TV characters. They were dressed up as Captain America, Batman, and Jason. Their mission was to arrest suspected phone thieves. With the help of aerial drones, the costumed officers moved in and made their arrests. A man and a woman were taken into custody with 5 stolen phones seized at the scene. Hat tip to the police in Rio for their creativity. Well, that's going to do it for this edition. I'm John Bachman. Ed Henry and The Big Take is up next.